Disgruntled members of the ANC yesterday tried to march to Luthuli House to call on the party's National Executive Committee and President Zuma to resign. Some have pointed to a third force, suggesting the EFF in this instance being behind the march, whilst the ANC's Kusela Sangoni has called the march a victory for the age-old traditions of the contest of ideas in the ANC. The organizer of the hashtag Occupy Luthuli House March and former ANC Youth League Deputy President Ronald Lamola joins us to discuss the intentions behind the march, and he is going to tell us some more about the dynamics that seem to be developing within the organization. Ronald, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Brett.
And as I was teasing you earlier on, saying, you know, when there's an attempt to march on the ANC, somehow you happen to be there as well. Are you not discouraged that these marches seem to be not going anywhere? I mean, you tried it, St. George's, when the NEC met last December, this one yesterday, and it did not happen somehow.
No, not in any way, but I mean, a revolution has never been an easy thing. They are started by a few people. I mean, the Cuban Revolution, the current demonstrations in Zimbabwe have been started by one person. So I am convinced that the whole country does agree with what we want to happen in the ANC, because all of us are worried about the state of the organization. And I'm sure even members of society, it's not only members of the ANC who are worried, it's also members of society, because whatever decisions are taken by the governing party affect the economy, they affect members of society. So we're not at all discouraged. We believe it's a course to be taken now, or else we might be late like the middle class in Zimbabwe that is only standing up now, because all along the situation was affecting the poorest of the poor and the working class. But now even the middle class, they are beginning to feel that what is happening in the country is affecting them. So we need to arrest it as early as possible, and we hope they join us as quickly as possible.
Well, let's quickly look at the demands or the issues that you are concerned about within the ANC. Specifically, you want President Zuma to resign?
Yes, yes.
And what else?
We want him to resign, and even the NEC, we feel that it is failing to make him to account, because I mean, there is no bigger sin that a president can commit than to have been found by a constitutional court to have violated the constitution. There is no any other sin that it can be committed. And we do not understand how the NEC is failing to recall him on that basis, because when President Mbeki was recalled, there was no consultation, there was no running around the country, delaying. The country is in a slope down, and we need urgent and decisive energy and decisions. What we do not get from the current NEC is a sense of urgency. That's why we are very concerned.
Could be that, you know, the NEC of the ANC and the different structures of it are quite happy with the way the president is performing his role as the president of the country, at least.
If they're happy, why did they take collective responsibility for the outcomes of local government? They have acknowledged that there are challenges, there are serious problems, and they have also, with regard to the Constitutional Court, they said they're accepting the apology, which all of us felt that the apology is not enough for violating the Constitution. So it is not that the structures are happy. It's because when the NEC has taken a decision, it will then go to the structures and say, this is what we have decided. This is because of the principle of democratic centralism. A branch cannot go against a decision of an upper structure. And it's exactly, again, now what we are being subjected to, that a decision has been taken to take collective responsibility. And the branches are going to be told that the democratic centralism must apply. Branches cannot disagree with what the NEC has decided. So it makes it difficult or impossible for the rank and file, the lower members of the ANC to say, this is our view, particularly when the NEC has taken a decision. Because remember, the NEC is the highest decision-making body in between conferences or NGCs and so forth. So the NEC must be decisive, must take a step. And now the NEC has not been able to be decisive. It did not take a step. Ourselves as the members must stand up and say, if nothing is not done with agency as we need it, we have to, that's why we wanted to occupy
here's
the
Headquarters.
headquarters.
We will go back to, you know, the inner workings of the ANC in a moment. But an example is what happened this past week when the Occupy Luthuli House press briefing was held in Pretoria, and it was disrupted, by representatives, office bearers of the ANC in the Tshwane region. And they told everybody, the media, whoever cared to listen, that there's a way in which you do these things. And for people who never attend meetings of the ANC, it was quite instructive to see how ANC deals with itself.
Now, I think what happened there in Tshwane was a mirror of how members of the ANC are threatened to speak. They are threatened economically that you are not going to get a tender or business. They are threatened that you are not going to be employed if you don't agree with so and so. And for us, although we condemn that action, it was an act of cowardice, because ideas must be contested. If you have got a different view, you must state your view, it must be contested. But also ourselves, we believe that the ANC is not an underground organization. The ANC was underground, it was unbanned in 1990. It must open in a transparent, in a democratic society, and it must be contested openly. We don't understand why there must be some closed shop and people can't express their views, because the reality is that the ANC is no longer the ANC when Tambo was there and it was operating, that they were scared that people can infiltrate and so forth. Now we're operating in an open society. Why must we have, although we do agree that there might be certain mechanisms, but those mechanisms have proven to have failed. When the Gupta's investigation was whitewashed, the Gandla issue, there are various issues where these mechanisms have failed. In the Free State, people ended up going to court to challenge the outcome of a Congress. Now in KZN, they've gone to court. In reality, when they say to you, Bratim, you must follow the internal mechanism, indirectly they're just telling you that, well, now you must shut up.
Now, it started with the press briefing when it was disrupted. The actual march itself also had to be downscaled. People reportedly were sent back and so on. What exactly is it? I mean, people were called on to occupy Luthuli House, the very least to participate in the march. On the day of the march, they're being told, don't participate. Why?
It is necessarily the same reason, but also for us, Pratim, we have also said it yesterday, that such kind of behavior it's uncalled for in a democratic society. But also, the reality is that maybe the ANC also need to look itself very thoroughly, because why do you still need an MKMVA that operates like a military private junta of an individual or of something? Because the MK was dissolved on the basis that we are now going to a democratic society. We now need to contest with ideas. And they formed the MKMVA just to be a welfare structure for comrades who were coming from exile. It was not formed to be another military wing. We don't need a military wing at this stage. What we need, we don't need weapons of war. We need weapons of economic struggle, free education, tablets and ballpoints, things that are going to empower the youth of this country to fight an economic struggle. We don't need such a kind of an investment.
Ronald, tell me, what do you think is happening with the current ANC? I mean, you have Occupy Luthuli House, then there's MKMVA saying it will stop this by any means. Then you have the Women's League speaking differently. Then you have the Youth League also saying people like yourself are frauds and are not really genuine members, or some of the people within this call for Occupy Luthuli House. Who is who and what is the ANC? No, I'm serious. I mean, just please help the people of South Africa have a sense of when we talk about the ANC, which part exactly, because there's also talk of factions, there's so much. Just explain it to me.
The unfortunate part which these guys, when they raise issues which they forget, is that the ANC is not only voted for by its members. They are also sympathizers in society who are not members of the ANC, who don't participate in branches, but they support, they like the ANC, they sympathize with its policies and its programs. And that's why the ANC is voted for by more than 8 million people. It's not voted by the million or 100,000 or 800,000 members or so. And that is the considerations which people need to take, particularly those who are inside the structures. But when we talk about the ANC, we are talking about a structure that is currently bestowed to now run its affairs, the National Executive Committee, on behalf of all of us who are the members of the organization. So the ANC, it's us, the members, but we then give responsibility to the NEC or to provincial structures and provinces or regions to say, hold this thing for us, direct it up until we meet again in a form of a conference to again take stock and resolve on various issues. So that's how the movement is supposed to operate. But the reality, Bratim, is that where it is now, the organization, is exactly where it was after the Wankis Polile campaign, when Chris drafted a memorandum to O.R. Tambo. And O.R. Tambo was very angry that Comrade Chris did not follow the processes of the camps as he was a soldier to present the memorandum with his 8 other comrades. But after he was supported by Ben Turok wrote and supported Chris' memorandum to say, this is also what we're experiencing. There is truth in this memorandum, because the memorandum was vilified. They were called all kinds of names. But Tambo ended up intervening because John Modise wanted to take Chris Hani into a military tribunal. He could have also been sentenced to death for not following this internal process we were told about. But that conference became the most watershed conference of the ANC. That led to its renewal, that led to it adopting a strategy and tactic. And I think where we are now, we're in a situation where the internal bureaucratic processes are no longer able to rescue the movement.
So that is the current situation. Let's go to cabinet now. We saw also divisions there, right? One minister is being investigated by the Hawks. Other ministers try to defend him. The other minister breaks rank from the cabinet. It issues its own statement. He issues a separate statement, and then reprimanded by the presidency. Even the Secretary General says one thing in support of the Minister of Finance. Then the Deputy Secretary General says something else. I tell you, it's very confusing, actually, when you are observing or analyzing what's happening with the ANC, even when it's in government now, not only within its own structures.
Yeah, that's why we are very concerned, and we believe or we feel there's no sense of agency, because what we have just alluded to is not only affecting the security cluster per se, or the economy, also the economy as a whole is affected. I mean, what was announced is a very important issue with regard to the banks, the KPMGs, and all those. It's not so it's not an easy thing. It should have been thoroughly thought of by cabinet, even when if there was such a thing. It should have been well thought of, well crafted, and well researched by its own cabinet. And when it's announced, understood by all South Africans, and in terms of what policies. So we need. That's why we were there. We also raised it to say South Africans need economic policy certainty. They need political certainty. They also need an issue with regard to the security. There must be certainty. It can't be a mobocracy where everybody, we end up like a shapeless amoeba where there's no direction in the country. And ourselves as leaders of society, the only thing we're demanding from Luthuli House, I say, can we then put our house into order? Can we restore the values of what the ANC is known for? Can we take our rightful place as leaders of society and be cohesive?
You say mobocracy is what's going on. The same ANC leadership may turn around and say, we agree with you. That's why we are dealing with you. That you shouldn't put a mob together and say, occupy Luthuli House. This is a disciplined organization, proud tradition, has been in existence a long time, has got appropriate structures, processes, must be followed. Please, keep your peace.
But we do have reasons why we have done what we've done, and we've stated it in front of them that, look, the NEC is bestowed to run this thing in the absence of us, the members.
Here's another point, which I find interesting, that some of the influential members of the ANC have complained separately. They say this here, they say there, veteran, highly respected people. What makes it difficult for them to take whatever action they believe must be taken to correct the ANC?
Yeah, that is the other challenge that we have, Bratim, because people do complain and so forth. But I really respect the veteran, and I understand. I mean, the veterans, they fought for this country. They've went to exile, some were arrested. They've done their part. They've done their part. The only thing they can do now is to write letters, call press conferences, and raise their issues, do interviews as we are doing here. But ourselves, the young ones, we can't complain the same way the veterans are complaining. We have to take action. When we see that there's no sense of agency, we need to stand up and say, we must reclaim this thing. That's why I wanted to go and occupy the building.
So is that the end of the story, given what happened yesterday? Is that it?
No, it's not the end of the story.
Yeah.
We are going to continue to engage across the country, visit branches, visit regions, structures, and mobilize them to say, if we do not save this thing as urgently as possible, the situation might become irreversible.
What do you think is going to happen to the ANC going forward? President Zuma has been out of the country for 2 weeks now, I think, and this is probably the third. I may be getting my facts wrong. What do you think is likely to do when he comes back, and what's going to happen with the ANC in the short term?
I think the ANC has about 3 to 6 months to make sure that President Zuma resigns, because if he doesn't do so, I doubt that after 6 months from now, we will still be able to convince South Africans that we are indeed the listening organizations. The recent local government elections require a drastic action. And there is no drastic action that we can take than the head of the organization resigning and saying, I've heard the cries of South Africans. Because I've heard the cry, I'm now giving this to a new breath of fresh air, which is then going to take you to a Congress, elect a new leader, and then there will be a process of renewal. Because with him at the helm, I'm convinced there will be no renewal, because all the things we're complaining about, the allegations of Gupta capture, the violation of the Constitution, and many other things, they all surround him, and the NEC failing to hold him to account.
Thanks very much, Ronald, for having been our guest, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, there you are, the Occupy Luthuli House, one of the organizers, and somebody who feels very strongly that there has to be change in leadership of the ANC is the former Deputy President of the Youth League, Ronald Lamola, who's been our guest here on the show.